U.S. forces are said to have been a part of an airstrike in Somalia that's killed 5 fighters from the al-Qaeda-linked militant group Al-Shabaab. It is the latest in a series of U.S. military operations targeting this particular terror outfit. Now, U.S. forces had been advising Ugandan soldiers with AMISOM during an operation against an illegal taxation checkpoint when the Ugandans got into a firefight with 15 to 20 Al-Shabaab fighters. The Pentagon spokesman said no American forces were wounded during the incident, which took place west of Mogadishu on Thursday. Now, Al-Shabaab's military operations spokesperson has meanwhile denied that Al-Shabaab suffered any casualties in what he described as a U.S. drone strike. Well, let's try and get you some clarity on these latest developments. I'm now joined live by CCTV's Abdulaziz Billo in Mogadishu, and from Washington, joined by CCTV's Andrea Arenas. Let's start with you, Abdulaziz. This latest airstrike against Al-Shabaab militants, of course, said to have taken place just west of Mogadishu. Just give us the official line from Somali authorities as to what exactly happened and whether or not there's any confirmation on this particular operation.
Well, Lindy, according to Somali authorities here in Mogadishu, they have confirmed to us indeed that the militants were killed, almost 5 militants were killed, and almost a dozen others injured in the latest drone strike that took place in the Somali southern town of Afgoye, now in a place called Anole. This is to the west of the capital, Mogadishu. So that is the confirmation that we have from authorities here. Also, the Somali National Army is saying that it has made a lot of gains in the fight against the Al-Shabaab. Following the drone strike, they managed to seize quite a number of rural villages that fall under the administration of Afgoye. So definitely authorities here are confirming that the drone strike did take place, and also it also boosted them to be able to seize quite a large number of area. Now the attack took place, as we said, in Anole. This is in the rich agricultural area of Afgoye, when Ugandan troops wanted to dismantle an illegal checkpoint that is run by the militant group Al-Shabaab. So following the drone strike, the government forces and AMISOM managed to push back the militants from that area, and the U.S. has also attested that indeed the operation was successful.
Right, let's bring you in now, Andrea. On the other hand, what we're hearing is that the Pentagon is saying that U.S. forces were not directly involved in this operation. What's the official word from Washington?
Right, the official word here in Washington is that the U.S. has not been involved on the ground. Basically, what they're saying is that when the Ugandan forces entered and started with this operation, this raid, they were attacked by Al-Shabaab forces. And it was then when the U.S. commander on the ground called for a defensive airstrike, which is basically not considered as them intervening or boots on the ground or having any sort of military involvement. Now, the U.S. has highlighted several times that their commitment is basically to advise and assist Somali and Ugandan forces. They were not there on a warfare capacity. There were casualties as a result of these airstrikes, but the Captain Davis, the spokesperson for the Pentagon, has once again highlighted that the role of U.S. military in Somalia is to assist and advise, not to get themselves involved in warfare or in military actions. That's basically what they've said, but it is important to highlight that this type of action and operation does highlight the level of commitment that the United States has towards African governments that are trying to fight against Al-Shabaab and other Al-Qaeda linked groups.
Right, well, let's take a closer look then at the Somali response to the U.S.'s commitment. As we heard Andrea saying, they're committed to offering advice and assisting in various capacities. But tell us, Abdulaziz, just how is the U.S. involvement in this fight against Al-Shabaab being viewed in Somalia?
Well, Lindy, the United States by far remains Somalia's #1 supporter in the fight against the war on terror here in Somalia. Now, it's also the biggest funder and supporter for the African Union peacekeeping force here, known as AMISOM. Now, quite a number of Al-Shabaab militants, including top leadership of the Al-Shabaab, have been killed in U.S. drone strikes here in southern Somalia in the past years. Now, this has totally weakened the Al-Shabaab. Also, the militant group has suffered heavy casualties from the U.S. drone strikes. Quite a number of bomb experts and a number of experts who the Al-Shabaab actually relied on were killed in drone strikes in the past a few years. This has also weakened the militant group Al-Shabaab. Now, interestingly, is also the U.S. forces. They have carried out most recently an attack in central Somalia, killing more than 150 militants. This was considered the biggest single deadliest strike by the U.S. counter-terrorism operations. Now, they're also training the Somali elite commandos who are being used to launch raids in Al-Shabaab controlled areas. So definitely authorities here are praising the African Union force and the U.S. drone strikes that has actually indeed helped the government assert its control in the vast south and central regions of Somalia, Lindy.
Well, it seems, Andreas, however, that despite the successes that are attributable to the U.S., that Washington is a bit tentative to really make some strong pronouncements on its role in Somalia. Just explain to us whether or not the U.S. is acting alone or whether this is part of coordinated joint responses to threats such as those that come from Al-Shabaab.
Well, historically, the United States has been acted very, has been very worried about how they proceed in Somalia. Let's remember 1993 when a Black Hawk Down operation happened. It was when 18 American troops died when helicopters they were in were shot down by military forces. Since then, several administrations have been very worried about how to proceed in their policies towards Somalia. Now, in 2014 was the first time in over 20 years that the U.S. actually deployed forces to Somalia so that they could be trained and work together in order to try to defeat terrorist organizations and groups like Al-Shabaab. Currently, there are at least 50 U.S. Troops in Somalia. Their job is to work together and coordination and to assist again in advice in how to proceed in order to fight against Al-Qaeda-linked groups. Now, they do work together with African forces, with the Somali forces, as well as with other African countries that are in Somalia in this same fight.
All right, we'll leave it there. Thanks very much to Andrea Arenas, live for us there in Washington, and Abdulaziz Billo coming there to us from Mogadishu.